Guys, I hope you're doing great. So we're going to finish the Chiron series today. We're going to be doing the December astrology within the next couple of days. So don't worry, that's going to get out. But I wanted to just wrap up the third part of the Chiron series. For those of you who are new to my channel, welcome, welcome. My name is Jackie. I'm a Western whole house evolutionary astrologer. I know it's a mouthful, but I approach astrology from a psychological perspective. A lot of you have been asking about the cards. You might have not seen the video where I broke my hand. I know it looks like Frankenstein. I got attacked by a dog. I'm okay. I had a couple of surgeries, but I'm going to try doing the cards in about a week or so. So please hang in with me. I appreciate your patience. For those of you who might want to work with me privately, I just want to let you know that I am running a big December special, so check that out in the description box below. And of course, I appreciate your likes, subscribes, and shares. It motivates me to put out additional content and it helps my channel grow. So without any further ado, let's talk about the third part of Chiron. So the first Chiron video, I talked about Chiron the Wounded Warrior. You could go back and check that. For those of you who are just tuning into this third level, please go back and check because I do go into more extensive conversation. Now, remember, guys, these are general readings, but I think it's helpful to just give you seeds of thought, things to think about. Try to get as deep as we can on this very, very general platform. So we explained what Chiron was. Then we explained last week the weight of Saturn and the solution of the strategy, better to say, of Uranus. And today we're going to talk about the axis of healing for that. So I think it might be helpful to um, go into my chart to just show you guys what we're going to be looking at. Okay. All right, so this is my chart. I was born June 6, 1967 at 9:47 p.m. Yes, I'm a night baby, so I really resonate with my moon, my cuspy Gemini Taurus moon. But this is Chiron. Okay, so my Chiron, as I mentioned last week, in the first video, my Chiron is cusped, and I know a lot of you did write me notes that you are as well. So if your Chiron, look at the degree. If it's a 28, 29, 0, 1, or 2 degrees, you are a solid cusp. Solid. So therefore, you are not only that sign. So using myself as an example, I have Chiron in Pisces, Chiron in Aries. It's in the third house. The landlord of the third house is Gemini. So I experience my Chiron energy through the lens of Gemini, as well as the lens of the fourth house landlord, which is Cancer. I have to understand all four of those placements. Okay, just want to remind you guys of that. If you have your Chiron retrograde and you want to know what that is, I did a separate video on what that means. I did a whole video on retrogrades. You could check that out. Okay. So now, first video, we talked about what does Chiron mean, in a particular placement. Then last week, we talked about how important Saturn and Uranus are to understanding. So as you can see, my Saturn energy, the weight in my chart happens to be in the lowest house of my chart. Lucky, lucky me. Which is the fourth house connects to my first family and my home environment, right? And my Uranus energy is in the ninth house. So this is where my strategy needs to come from. What's in the ninth house? God, spirituality, religion, organized and otherwise. And I've always been very spiritual, very based in my own kind of religion my entire life. Absolutely believe in God. And this is a very real, very important thing in my life, right? We have that Virgo energy. And, just to do like a quick sweep through my early environment, Aries energy, I had a lot of fire. I was always very confrontational with my family. Always, with not so much with my siblings, but for my siblings too. Uranus in the ninth, father energy. The onus was on me to work through father energy in Virgo. Ninth house, by the way, is the manifestation of father energy and how we experience father in life. My father was very critical. And there were points where he was very loving and then he wasn't loving, very changeable, Pluto energy in there, Uranus, like things would just come out of nowhere and I wouldn't really understand. I mean, I later figured, once I really understood his chart, I understood not that it wasn't his responsibility, but I understood why he was the way he was. But I needed to do a lot of breaking away. And I needed to break away from my father in order to be able to develop my own sense of home later on in life. And I needed to create my own home environment with my own family and my own friends who I made family as well. And so that's something that I knew I had to work on, right? I mean, this was something that I figured out at an early age, once I understood my Saturn and my Uranus energy in a way where I needed to work through my Chiron energy. I needed to try to shine light in order to heal, because I knew that once I healed, that's where the wisdom comes. So what axis do I have to look at? Well, I'm cusp, so I have to go one, two, three. Everybody has to go three over. So let's just make believe it was in the third house, solid at like 15 degrees or whatever, right? If it was in the solid of 15 degrees, I would say one, two, three. I need to look at my 12th house, one, two, three, and my sixth house. So this is the axis. And axis is just opposing houses. I want you to think about it like a line. So we have houses 1 and 7, 2 and 8, 3, 9, 4, 10, 5, 11, and 6, 12. So if you have your Chiron in the third, you're going to be looking at the 12th house, 6th house axis. With my Chiron also, though, in the fourth house, because it's a 29 degrees cusp, I also have to go over, putting it in Aries, and I have to go over one, two, three, houses 1 and 7. I have to look at this axis as well. And that's what I've done. I really had to understand that in order for me to forge my own way, I needed to unpack the emotions connected to my first family, understand that it was not meant for me to have a very, very close adult relationship with all of my siblings except for one in particular, my brother who passed away in June. He was one of my soulmates in this life, and it is because of the other things in his chart. And my one sister who is still living, we have a very close relationship, even though she's been very hurtful to me. Later in life, we sort of, she saw her stuff, right? Which is nice. Having Chiron in this placement does manifest as a lot of scapegoat energy, but later recognition of it, right? Things are ultimately revealed. But, through therapy as well, sixth house, 12th house axis, very connected to therapy, very connected to taking care of my health, very connected to doing a lot of spiritual work. In fact, making it part of my life's work was determined when I was born. This is very clear in my chart, right? Especially my son is also in the sixth house. My moon, a lot of very heavy energies. Of course, also I have Jupiter and Venus in the house of astrology. So there, we don't really want to look at one thing, but to heal my Chiron specifically, those are the axes that I had to go. So what you want to do is just look at that house and go three over to one side, three over to the other, and then check out that particular axis. Okay. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Okay. So now let's start unpacking the house placements and the axes. Okay, so if you guys have your Chiron in either houses 1 or 7, this part of the video is for you. Now, these happen to be, and these are angular energies we're talking about, okay? Houses 1 and 7 are angular houses, okay? And the answer for you, the solution axis for you to heal that inner wound is the axis of houses 4 and 10. Okay, that's where the healing is going to come. And these are very the culmination of these are very connected to activity, energy, drive to move forward. That first house energy obviously is very linked to Mars. Fourth house is Cancer, seventh house is Venus, 10th house is Capricorn. So there's this like, we have to go and do, right? There is action that is necessary here. So it's not the kind of thing where you could just say, all right, I'll work it out whenever. It's like, no, like honestly, real action has to take place in your life. So let's talk about this. We're going to unpack first the fourth house energy and 10th house energy for you guys, since you have it in houses 1 or 7. This is really connected to moon energy, right? Because that fourth house is ruled by the moon, right? Um, Fourth house is very self-reflective. It's very self-reflective of consciousness, of, what you need to feel emotionally secure. And it's also the assimilation of all of the experiences from the first three houses. So the house you were born in, the house where you realize that you need things, and then the next house, which is all about like communicating your mental faculties and engagement with like your siblings in that early environment. And how are you assimilating with all of those experiences? This is the place to integrate. So it's the integration of mind, body, and feelings around the central version of you, the central I. Who are you, right? And integrating all of that. This is very important to healing your Chiron energy. It's the sense of the me in here, right, inside of you that's experiencing the doing of your life, really getting very in touch with your inner self. It's your inner base of operations. It's the maintenance of your own individual characteristics of yourself in a very stable form because you learn these things very early in life, right? And really looking at these things. It's what you find when you retreat back to yourself, right? Into that deepest space, whether even if you don't meditate, just that inner you, right? Again, that inner pace of operations. It's the home, it's what we're like in private, it's the roots of your being, very connected, obviously, to early family, that home environment, that, we could say property and real estate as well. We could say, yeah, family. This is like a healing element for you guys. It's looking at your soul as the main interplay between you and the events in your life, and understanding that you are that common denominator, right? Between what goes on in your life and what you experience, you're always that common denominator. It's of course the influence of your family of origin on you and your choices that you've made in life, right? We always say because of the fourth house, so the 10th house, right? How we show ourselves to the world is based on where it is that we come from. So for you guys, it's very important for you to unpack where it is that you're from. You know, Definitely very important there. It also is looking at, the early conditioning of the early home, the qualities that you carry, which stem from, either racial or ethnic origins, right? Depending on where you're at, right? Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something that's really important, looking at that energy, the influence of the hidden parent. You know what I mean by the hidden parent, right? It's typically the father, but not always. Sometimes it's both parents, really, depending on your situation. It's the inborn image of um, your parent who you maybe have the least comfortable relationship with. It's also looking at how we end things in the fourth house. A lot of people just, ascribe that to the 12th house and or the eighth house, but it's the fourth house as well. It's water, very connected to water energies. And it's the conditions surrounding the end of life, right? And really looking at these things, unpacking, what is your perception? What is your attitude about these things? Is it based in fear? Is it based in, ego? Is it based in, I'm really kind of looking at, how to unpack all of that. Now, this, of course, does work with the 10th house, which is naturally associated with Saturn and Capricorn. And the 10th house is very connected to this idea of integration of the self into society. So therefore, it does obviously connects to your profession, your vocation, your career, your office, wherever you are, that status in life, public reputation, standing in the world, how you approach work as well, looking at how do you approach work based on where it is that you come from. So because for a lot of people that have to work out this axis, it's like, I'm going to be successful no matter what, because you come from a challenging environment. Or you might be very unmotivated because maybe you were not in a very supported space. So you struggle with a positive sense of self and self-concept, and you functioning on fear. So a lot of these things matter, right? How you sort of encounter the conditions, right, in the sphere of career and how you wish to be seen when you are working, right? What do you want people to see you as? Who are you? Who are you? When you show up in work, what do you want people to think as well? And this is also very connected to what we wish to be remembered for, contributing to the world. And this could be very healing to this wound, right? Because if your wound is in that first house or seventh house energy, there could be a lot of wounds surrounding employment, relationships, your ability to feel very motivated in life. It's like, no, no, no. Like you have to really look at, okay, what am I going to contribute? And you have to do it, right? It's really looking at that. What do you want to contribute? It is your style, that before the public and the image that you want to, again, put out there. It's that need for achievement, recognition, and praise. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what you have to go for. That's going to be very healing because if you get the recognition and you feel good about yourself, that's going to help heal the false narrative that you're not okay, that there is something wrong with you. You also really do need to look at the energy and the image of the shaping parent in your life and how did that manifest? It is typically mother. And it's that connection between your relationship to your mother and the way that you relate to the world at this later point in life. And really unpacking that there's value there, guys. There's a lot of value. And keep in mind, and I mentioned this in the other videos, if you have your Aries energy, if you have your current energy rather in Aries and or the first house, it's really like because you're a survivor. And so because you're a survivor and you're highly resilient, you're just like, what's the point to looking back? I don't really care. There is so much value to it because this is not about saying everybody did the best that they knew how and I forgive everybody. And that's amazing if you could get yourself to that space, but that's more up here. It's not really here. It's more about understanding, man, a lot of the choices I've made in my life are because of this sort of very low voice that's actually way louder than I'd like to admit, kind of working within me, pointing me in particular direction. So this doesn't mean you're not successful according to societal standards or you don't meet good people in relationship, but we all have an inner wound. We all do. We could choose to ignore it. Could always do that, but it's there. And so these are things that you would want to look at if you have your Chiron in that first house or seventh house. Also, what you feel in the world, well, I guess I should say what you feel that the world, what you feel mother, the idea of mother requires of you in life. What's required of you? It's looking at your ambition. And it's also really looking at how do you feel about authority, just in general? How do you feel about authority? How do you feel about government? Because government is very 10th house energy. Are you like, do you rail against it? Are you really into it? Do you love it? Is it something that you feel passionately about? Chances are you're feeling one way or the other, right? And if it's not about government or, authority figures. You might even be an authority figure. Becoming an authority figure can be very healing as well. Becoming the boss in a situation, being ambitious, allowing yourself to go there. These could be very, very healing energies to that inner wound as well. But always like looking at yourself and checking back with yourself and how do you appear to the world and are you getting what you need from that other energy? Are you actually being fed by the situation, right? And not looking for things though where that Chiron energy is so much as actively trying to heal it, right? So not looking to not looking to other people to fill any sort of void within you. This is very action oriented. It's something that you must do, and it's very based in creating your own sense of emotional stability in life by engaging with at the outside world. Okay, guys, so I hope that was helpful. Thanks for hanging with me. I'll see you next time. Okay, so if you have your Chiron in houses 2 or 8, this part of the video is for you. So for you guys, you have to look at the axis of houses 5 and 11. in your chart, right? 5 and 11. I'm going to talk about what they each are, but that's the axis of healing for you. Now, house 5 is naturally associated with the sun in Leo, and both of these energies are succeeding houses. They come after angular houses and they represent stability and are very protected from rapid change, right? They're very akin to being like fixed sign quality in your chart. So let's talk about fifth house energy, because again, this is where you have to focus your energies in order to heal your Chiron. It makes sense here, right? Because those houses 2 and 8, those are very connected to like money. It's very connected to you versus other people in relationship. So what is the solution to a wound in that arena is more like a stable, succeeding house, right? So let's talk about the fifth house. And again, we're going to be talking about action that we have to look at within ourselves in order to heal, right? So we have to look at this urge to distinguish yourself as unique and special. That will be healing for you. There's nothing wrong with that. So a lot of times that Chiron in the second or in the eighth house, it's like you don't feel very good about yourself. There's a sense of self-esteem kind of thing going on. Maybe nobody even sees it around you. It's very, within yourself. But here it's like distinguishing yourself as unique, as special. What do you have that you bring to the table? Looking at the urge to expand and extend the influence that you have in your life. So not keeping yourself too small, right? Expanding that could be through work. It could be through just your friend groups. It could be through, we expand our territory when we have children. We expand our territory when we open a business. We expand our territory when we get into relationships. And you really want to look at your desire to be central and to have something revolve around you. That's healthy. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be an egomaniac, right? A lot of times the fifth house sun Leo energy, right? We could say, oh, that's all ego. That's a healthy ego is healthy ego. There's nothing wrong with that. You are worthy of that, of having something. Obviously, you're engaging with it, but something very important to you, right? Looking at your ability to produce, your ability to generate, and looking at that, this will be very healing for you. It will be healing for you to have children. It will be healing for you to open a business, for you to take on hobbies that you enjoy. Vacations are very healing for you. Taking chances, right? Depends on other things in your chart. Very, very healing. These are healing things. Falling in love, love affairs, romance. These are very healing for you. Looking at the outpouring of the self, right? What you pour out and the urge for creative expression. What do you have inside of you that needs to come out? You don't have to be Michelangelo. You don't have to be, the best at any, but getting it out. What's in you, right? Is there art? Are there words? Is there poetry? Are there dance steps? Is there the ability to rock climb? Is there the ability to do something, anything? It doesn't even have to be, I mean, everything can be creative. And literally anything can be creative. We could put a creative spin on anything, but really getting it out of you, right? But, chances are with this energy here, having that, second house, eighth house placement, your path to healing being artistic expression is chances are there's something very deep within you, and really looking at those pursuits which make you just glad to be alive, right? Which you take on and you throw yourself in with your whole heart and soul, and you're just like getting lost in it, right? Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter what it is, but it's something that will feed your joy. This fifth house is feeding your joy and what it is that you do for fun, your joy, right? That sense. It's not only children, it's all of these other things as well. So that part of healing is there in that fifth house energy. Now it's working on the axis. It's opposing the 11th house of friendships, right? 11th house is naturally associated. A landlord there, of course, is Aquarius. And we have Uranus as Aquarius, modern ruler. Saturn is also the ancient ruler there. So we could throw him in for good measure for those of you who follow the ancient placements as well. But this 11th house is very connected to friends. It's very connected to the urge to become something greater than who we are already and move beyond, how it is that you view yourself as already, again, path of healing, pushing yourself. Fifth house, being creative, monetizable talents. 11th house, making yourself go beyond more, just where you are in the moment. It's this idea of identifying with something larger than, again, yourself, and really looking at your friends, the types of friends that you have, how you behave with friends, what you project onto them, looking at the groups that you're involved with, looking at the systems and the organizations. Who are your friend groups? Who are the people that you work with? Who are your relationships with, right? Who is in your atmosphere, right? Who is around you? Because you really have to look at that as well. Are they in alignment with you? Are they supportive of your joy and whatever that means, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your artistic endeavors, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. But you're looking at that. You're looking at your sensitivity to new trends that are current in the atmosphere as well, looking at how quickly are you able to embrace new trends. And the reason why, having that Chiron, especially in the second house, eighth house axis, you're really looking at like your money, your possessions, and you can have a lot of nervousness around these things. You can have a lot of fear around change. You don't trust change, right? There's not this trust for change. And trends are very cyclical and they kind of stand for change, right? So how are you allowing yourself to embrace? Because it can actually be very healing, opening yourself up to look at trends. And trends is a very umbrella term for anything that's sort of new and of the moment, right? Looking at that, looking at these things, very important as well. Your goals, your objectives, your hopes and wishes, your gains as well, right? 11th house is very connected to like having money for retirement. It's really looking at like the next 10 to 15 years of your life. It's looking at social reform and causes. So those of you who have your Chiron in the second house, eighth house, you can gain a lot of healing getting involved in social reform, in public causes and things that ultimately help people. It's also looking at what you encounter as you're going, as you're following the path toward that which is what you aim for, right? So who you encountering, all the people on your path, right? You can end up having a lot of very kismet type of encounters, meaning they're very serendipitous. There's very, nothing's by chance. You could meet people who end up connecting you to a guy who knows a girl who knows a guy for a job, a money opportunity, a friendship, even a relationship. It's that kind of energy and being very open to that. It's also looking at group consciousness and then the interconnectedness of what that means to life. So it's not only about you, it's not only about your past. Because by the way, that second house, I feel like I spoke about this in one of the previous videos, but having your Chiron in the second house or eighth house, very connected to ancestral patterning. It's very connected to the past. It really is. It's very connected to that. So it's important to understand and embrace this idea of group consciousness, group thinking, right? This global superorganism, the global brain, the global mind, right? Understanding that it's just not about you, but it's about other as well. Is that something that needs to be worked out with your Chiron in the second house or eighth house? Because that second house, eighth house axis is really it needs to work out. Chiron in either of those houses needs to work out, what matters to me versus other people, the money I have, the money you have. And it could create a very like mine and yours mentality. Part of the healing here is understanding that it needs to go beyond that. It needs to go beyond the me versus we kind of thing, right? Not sacrificing your own joy, your own happiness, your own need to be seen, heard, and happy, but it's about balancing that with other people, right? So I hope that was helpful for you. Thank you so much for hanging with me, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey guys, so if you have your Chiron in houses 3 or 9, we're going to be looking at the houses on 6 and 12, the axis 6 and 12. And we're going to talk about what these are. These are Caden houses. Houses 3, 6, 9, and 12 are all Canaan houses, and they're preparatory houses for what comes next after the angular houses. So they're associated with learning. So this is going to be very connected to learning to serve as a foundation for activities that are carried out in houses 3, 6, 9, and 12, right? There's a lot of looking at belief system. There's a lot of looking at healing. There's a lot of looking at responsibility through communication here for you guys. But let's just unpack that sixth house first. Again, as I'm explaining houses 6 and then 12, I want you to understand that these should be spaces of healing for you. And it's about balancing out houses 6 and 12 together, okay? So house 6, right, is the space of further refinement and differentiation of yourself, meaning from others. Refining means, how are you responsible in your life? How do you take care of your health? How do you problem solve? This is a very solution focused house, very solution focused, right? This is looking also at characterizing yourself by how you differ from other people. Again, this is all part of the healing. How are you different from other people? Reducing things to their parts, down to the nuts and bolts of things. This is very left brain activity, right? This will be very helpful in helping you to process because, again, having your Chiron in either house 3 or 9, we're talking about our mental faculties. We're talking about the way we communicate, the way we think, the way that we are able to not only communicate, but negotiate things, right? And so it's very important that we understand our own mind and our own sense of self and the facts of a situation. That could be very healing, right? As we unpack this wound, right? Discrimination, being selective. Because Gemini ninth house energy, this could be very wanderlust. It could be very kind of all over the place energy. Chiron could bring that up, right? So being very selective, very discriminating. This is healing for you, right? It's that sixth house is where Virgo lives. Virgo is the most critical energy, right? It's also so solution oriented, right? It's all about looking for problems, not being scattered, not lamenting about this, that, or the other, so getting right to the nuts and bolts of something and saying, how could we find solution? And it's here also where there should be an assessing, where you assess the use that you make of the power that you do hold, the energy that you do hold, and how capable are you of executing that energy. So when I say energy, the energy to be responsible in your daily life, the energy to take care of your health, you have to be taking care of your health here. That's part of the solution. Because the sixth house is health, not only mental, physical, but also emotional. So it's how are you taking care of your health? How are you working your day to day? I do also want to say, obvious interpretation here is pets will be very, very healing for you, very healing. In fact, you might, for the most part, your pets may even have relatively long longevity as well, compared to a lot of other placements in general in the chart. You really need to be looking at the relationship between, what you are inside against what it is on the outside. Who are you really, right? There's got to be that correlation made, that connection made between your inner world of your mind and your feelings and the outer world of your physical body. There's got to be that, right? There's got to be this connection because the sixth house is very, very, whenever we have a heavy placement in here, we have to really honor this idea of the mind-body connection where if you're feeling really stressed out about something from the past, you probably struggle with lower back pain. And the thing is, you might not even realize it. It could be on a subconscious level. It's trying to get in touch with that, right? That acute stress hangs in your shoulders. Sixth house, stomach conditions, right? A lot of times, so we want to take good care of our gut health. This is very healing, right? With this particular Chiron placement. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our general health. We want to make sure that we're being responsible. This will make us feel good about ourselves, right? Being very open to learning things as well. We have to really look at your willingness to make adjustments to necessity and living life within boundaries. There have to be boundaries established within your life because that Chiron in Gemini Sagittarius does not like boundaries, doesn't. Even if you kind of feel like you exercise decent boundaries, you know what I mean? Like you really have to exercise like, nope, I can't do any more of that. This is not good for me, whatever it is. And that's going to be very, very healing for you as well. You have to again connect to also just like the basic everyday life things, which can be a little tricky because, Chiron in that third house Gemini, the fourth house Sagittarius ruled energy, and I'm talking about like the landlords of those houses. They do not like a lot of responsibility. They just don't. I mean, they'll do it, but they don't love it. And here, part of the healing could be getting into daily rituals, mundane, everyday circumstances and reality just sort of being embraced, and that could make you feel really good, where it's like you feel like you're checking off the boxes. That could be very healing for you. It's very cathartic, where it's like, this is what I have to do today, and I'm so happy. Oh my gosh, this was a productive day. That is good for you, right? This is healing. Looking at your relationship to your employees, if you have any hard help, if you have any, the way that you engage with people in the supermarket, the dry cleaner, the nail salon, how are you connecting to people? Because that could actually bring you a lot of peace, having connections in every little part of your basic daily life. Very nice energy. Also, needing to own your own qualities of yourself as somebody who serves other people, right? Not as a slave. I'm talking about like being comfortable serving other people. This idea of being a servant and giving is going to be very healing. The idea of being there and being very giving. You need to really look at how you approach also work and your relationship to your coworkers here. Um, how you approach, any kind of craft, your ability to pay attention to detail. That could be very healing. Why? Because Gemini and Sagittarius, they don't really like doing that. They don't really like doing that. So if you make yourself do that, right? This idea of technical proficiency, paying attention to the minutia, like the annoying stuff, it's very healing. I could even say that as Gemini sun, like that's healing for me because it's not my default. I mean, I'm also Capricorn rising, so that helps me there. But like these things help me, right? It's very funny. Really looking at your relationship to inequality as well, because you can have a very interesting relationship to this idea of inequality, especially if you have, well, either one. If you have Chiron in the second or the eighth, if you have Chiron in Taurus or Scorpio, I'll tell you what, man, that is there. That is there. It is, you know, that Chiron in the eighth in Scorpio, it's really difficult to deal with the idea of inequality. It really, really is because there's a lot of like past life history. There's a lot of early environment that where this was a thing, in your soul. I'm really looking at your relationship to that and saying that, you know, um, what is it about? And just trying to better understand it, quite frankly, just shining light, right? Sunshine is the best disinfectant. And it really is just about that. Now, and working through that. Now, let's look at the 12th house, right? So we talked about the sixth house now, opposite of that, right? So the other side of the sixth house axis is the 12th house and naturally associated with Neptune. And obviously Pisces that's where it lives there. So really looking at this idea of yearning to return to the original state of unity, that's like that mind-body connection, peaceful spirituality. Um, Looking at your ability or your willingness to sacrifice the separate sense of self in order to merge with others, something greater, right? But because here we can absolutely be very afraid of the dissolution of self. And that's because of that Chiron axis, second, 2 and 8. It's very difficult for you to believe that just basic good old trusting relationships are even a possibility, right? Your relationships could be very driven by other things. And it's not that you wish to be like that, obviously. It's about this fear because there's a lot of like this sort of abuse, right, in your ancestral patterning here, right? So there could be this challenge to sacrifice who it is that you feel like you are in order to merge with other, because that for you might spell disaster or spell pain or whatever it is, but really needing to work on that, because if you can bring yourself to merge with other in a way where there are boundaries exercised, this could be unbelievably healing for you, right? Looking at and understanding any sort of confusion and empathy and compassion that may exist in your energy, as well as any sort of escapist tendencies, and being very upfront and honest with yourself, engaging in prayer, engaging in meditation and spirituality would be great. You have to really look at any tendency to like immerse yourself in alcohol or drugs or any other substitute, right? Let's just call it that. To basically gratify your sense of wholeness, um, and really kind of leaning into this idea of service to others, other causes, leaning into believing in God or some sort of higher being, depending on, what culture or religion you're from, but understanding that we're just not just here by like spontaneous combustion. It's pretty much been proven at this point. That's still just a hypothesis that a lot of people do kind of dig their heels into. There's so much evidence to explain that we have an ultimate creator, that which is God and whatever your God is, but understanding that that's important to lean into. Also, to understand, respect, and practice a lot of behind the scenes activity. And so this could be, being supportive behind the scenes could be very, very healing for you, but also understanding behind the scenes activity, right? And looking at for you, just for yourself, your unconscious patterns, your unconscious complexes that you bring into perhaps your relationships in your daily life. Looking at, do you allow yourself to dream? What is your sleep like? See, for you guys, sleep is so important. It's very important to everyone, but extra sleep is very healing for you guys. Very healing. Prayer is healing. Meditation is healing. Tarot is healing. Anything that is sort of like behind the scenes kind of thing. You do want to watch out for being swept away from unconscious compulsions. You do want to be careful of that energy, for sure. Being very mindful of hidden enemies, external or internal saboteurs. When I say internal, could be internal within like a group of people that you're affiliated with. It could be, could even be coworkers, but you could also be your own worst enemy here. So you want to just be very mindful of that, right? Really embracing in this idea of loving yourself, and you know, um, really loving yourself from a very deep point, because remember the 12th houses rule our subconscious. So not just loving yourself in words and I am worthy, I am, no, it's like feeling it on a soul level, and that subconscious, very important there. And understand that there are influences which impact you, and they cause things in your life that you don't always remember, and just being very open to this idea of leaning into that, right? And being willing to unpeel those layers and look at the past and look at where these things come from. Here, this is about really looking at how the umbilical cord affects life in the wound, and that's very connected to the status of mother and the status of what was she going through when she was pregnant for you, because the 12th house is very much about connected to when we were in utero, and what was your mom experiencing, what was her pragmatic daily life like when she was pregnant for you, because that does wash over you. And understanding that, that's part of the healing as well. There's a lot of connection to karma that needs to be unpacked here as well. And you have a lot of good karma in your life that you have to unpack here, though. It's not the kind of thing where it's just going to come upon you. But this is understanding that we carry karma from past lives, and there's a lot here for you to heal, right? In order for you to heal that Chiron, really being very honest about the energies that sustain you or undo you, right? Two different things. And this is very connected to accessing the collective unconscious, the imaginary, the dream state, the dream realm, again, the prayer realm, these are very, very healing for you. And I mean healing like meditation could like bring down your blood pressure. Seriously. Like that's the case for everyone. But having your where your current placement and where your current placements are or is, your it's even more dramatic for you guys, right? It's very, very beneficial. Spirituality, engaging in spirituality, but please, 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 light spirits only. So we're not talking about, and this is no offense to anyone who practices these things, but this is not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about witchcraft. We're not talking about, um, you know, anything that could be potentially dark. You really want to avoid that. I mean, at all costs, right? So anyone who speaks about that darkness and the heavy and the negative and the all of that, right? It doesn't have to be like that because where there's dark, there's light. And focus on the light, right? Because you're very, very sensitive. Your energy is sensitive and you have to protect it. Okay, guys? So I hope this was helpful. Anything else I wanted to mention about this? Oh, yeah. I mean, the unconscious, right? It's all about that unconscious as a storehouse right here. And this is something you guys just generally have to be dealing with because of that Chiron second house, eighth house axis. But it's through the 12th house, right? Whereas it's sort of this vast landscape for possibilities for the future and just really figuring that out. And also the 12th house does give us an indication towards our career. Right. So it's very important for you to understand your 12th house because it'd be very connected to your career and what you feel will ultimately end up redeeming you. What gives you hope? What gives you um, that positive energy that allows you to dream, right? So really understanding what's going on in your 12th house. So you have to understand the other placements that are going on there. You want to understand the sign that's on your, in that space and all that good stuff. But that is the axis of healing for you guys. I hope that was helpful. Thanks so much. See you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey guys, so this part of the video is for you if you have your Chiron energy in either house 4 or 10, right? 4 or 10, right? The fourth house is Cancer energy, the 10th house is Capricorn. Okay, so either one of those. So let's unpack this fourth house Cancer energy. It's naturally associated with the moon in Cancer, obviously, and it is an angular house as well. Again, houses 1, 4, 7, and 10 are the angular houses. This is associated with activity, with energy, with doing. There's assertiveness here. There's got to be action. So it's not the kind of placement where because some placements you could just kind of work on yourself inside, just go to therapy or do shadow work, whatever. This real healing here calls for action. Okay, calls for action. So if you have your Chiron in houses 4 or 10, we want to be looking at the first house, seventh house axis. First house, seventh house axis. And this is very important for you guys to understand, right? So first house is the house itself. It's the house of relationships. It's the house of uh, well, seventh house also has to do with your, to a particular extent, to a certain extent, it does have to do with your career because it does rule your boss, your bosses. But looking at both of these, so we're good. First, let's look at the first house, right? It's the house we're born in, right? We're born into the first house. It's our house of self, how we engage with the world, our self-image, how we initiate experiences. Now, keep in mind, if we have our Chiron wound, that deep wound in the fourth house of family and the 10th house of how the world views us, those are pretty deep wounds, right? So we really have to look at first house energies. How do we present to life? How do we engage with our life? How do we physically present ourselves to life? This is very, very focused here. And it's really about looking at this idea of how do we perceive the world? Because when you have your Chiron in the fourth house of the 10th house, how you're supposed to perceive the world can be really confusing. Like you could think you're going along normal, 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 and then you get a little older and you're like, wow, maybe that wasn't so normal what I went through. Or you just always kind of feel a little outside of the fray here. So you really have to look at that. You have to look at the focus that you bring into life, that you bring, right? Um, First houses also represents the kind of functions that are most valuable in discovering our own unique identity. Like, how are you, you? What do you bring out there to the world, right? It's your relationship to the idea of initiation. How do you get things started? Really looking at that because understanding how do you start things can be very healing when you have a wound in that inner base of operation and the most public, on that axis, the most public area of your chart. When you have a wound on that axis, that could create some analysis paralysis. So how do you communicate with initiation, right? It's really looking at the experience of your birth and the way that you enter new phases of life. No? How do you enter new phases of life? Is it through a forced hand? Is it through everything falling apart and then you're pushed into it, right? Which why, if you have Uranus retrograde, that might be a situation where you sort of pushed. Um, that's not the only retrograde that can cause that, but I don't want to make it about that. But looking at that, looking at how do you start things, right? How do you meet life in general? It's looking at the atmosphere of your early environment. Like, what were you in? What were you sponging in? You know what I mean? Because we're like little sponges. When we're little, we come in here all the way up, especially to the age of 8. We're just sucking in our atmosphere. And what was there? How did that speak to you? Right? What was that all about? Right? Really looking at the effect that you have on other people and trying to identify your own hero's journey. And when I say hero, it sounds so like dramatic and cool, right? But seriously, like, how do you help yourself? Because that's all the hero's journey is. It's where do you allow yourself to exercise energy and passion and motivation and initiate things that are going to help you feel more secure and connect with your own sense of self. How are you going to do that? It's very connected to that, right? Um, and really looking at also is very common as well, because could be very healing, is looking at your physical appearance and how, your physical vitality, how you appear to other people at certain points in your life and paying attention to that. Because you have to figure out how do you want people to see you? And that's how you want to come across. So a lot of times it's very healing to sort of create your own jam there, right? Create your own sort of presentation to the world, have your own style, do your own thing. Don't care so much about what people think. And a lot of you may have evolved to that point already where you don't. You just really don't care. But that's all part of healing the Chiron. Now that's in the first house, right? So again, keep in mind that first house energy, that's Aries, it's ruled by Mars, it's very connected to initiation, let's go, let's go. Having Chiron either in the fourth house or the 10th house can really inhibit that initiation. But we have to lean into that. We have to say it's not real, right? It's not a real wound. It's not. I could do this, right? Now let's look at the other side, that descendant, that seventh house energy naturally associated with Venus and Libra. This is very much about reconnecting to the I versus not the I, right? Because the not the I is anyone that we're in a relationship with. Now, it doesn't matter if it's your spouse, if it's just somebody who you're in a serious relationship with. It could be your boss is even a best friend. It doesn't really matter. Um, where are you? I'm going to tell you what else I find here as well, which could be very healing, is asking yourself in a very pointed way, is my energetic output that I give of myself in work true to who I am? Am I doing what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, or do I feel like I'm meant to be doing something else? Now, that doesn't mean you have to quit your job, but maybe you can make some changes there, and that could be very healing. Right? You want to be looking at the kind of activities which provide you with the realization of how much other people matter to you in your life. What does that mean? Allowing yourself to connect in relationship, actually allowing yourself to go there. What does that mean? It means you have to trust. That could be really difficult, right? Could be difficult. Um, it's almost like there's a veil over this idea of trust, right? But figuring out like what do people mean? Because I'll be honest with you, right? Where your current placements are, you it could be very difficult for you to attach a lot of value to people except for your children and your family, like your tribe, right? So it could be very difficult for you to care really that much about your boss. Doesn't mean you don't like them, you know, or your bosses, or you know, it could be very healing to understand that what you do for work is not who you are. It doesn't represent the totality of who you are. It's simply what it is that you do. But even when it comes to just like friends and all of that, it's this understanding of what will be very healing is this understanding of this is what's important to me. This is what this person brings me. This is how much I value them. But then looking at also, am I discounting this person? Am I being respectful enough? And looking at that, it's going to be a different answer for all of you, but that's you need to always pay attention to that engagement with other, okay, having to do with this particular placement. It's relationships based on mutual commitment, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's marriage partner, significant other, legal, otherwise, right? Because it's seventh house, the glyph is the scale, so it could even be legal. It's also the house of mirrors, which is a very important point to make here because seventh house, it's not the house of mirrors, it's the house of mirroring. Let me correct that. House of mirrors is more the 12th house. The house of mirroring is whatever energy you have in your seventh house, that's how you are in relationship, and it's also what you seek out in relationship, right? Based on how it is, though, that you feel about yourself. And this is where it can get a little tricky. So you really want to be very careful. Relationships can be very, very healing for you, but on the other side of that, guys, they could be very hurtful for you as well. And I know that sounds like very contrary, but what I mean is you have to watch out who you get into a relationship with because there could be a lot of trauma bonding. You could just go after this person and just be like, oh my gosh, I'm really connecting with this person. I feel like we're cut from the same cloth, and maybe you are. Maybe you have the same trauma bonded wound and you trauma bond. And then you realize, and not after so long, where the very things that you felt connected to in this person are the very things that either are annoying you or hurting you at the same time. So you have to really look at that as well. And it's also very connected to this idea, very healing will be, what do you need from others? Like, what do you need to import to you from other people? And being very clear on that. So it's not enough to say, I want a healthy relationship. You have to be very clear in delineating what that means. It's not enough to say, oh, I want a certain kind of boss. Okay, that's fine. I want an approachable boss. Okay, what does approachable mean to you? Oh, I want a partner who knows how to communicate. Perfect. That's great. What does that mean to you? Like literally, what does that mean? And getting very, very clear on that because your version of communication may be very different than their version of communication. It doesn't make them bad. It just means that you're two different people. And so there's got to be this understanding that not everything is going to function according to how you think it needs to be. That could be frustrating, but it could also be liberating, because it can very much deeply, really leaning into that deeply creates an environment of deepening relationships. Being super honest about yourself and what it is that you project onto other people as well, and being very honest about yourself and as far as what it is that you bring into relationships. Additionally, this is one of the couple of spaces of open enemies in the chart, and it's what you see more specifically, like I mentioned a moment ago, in other people. I don't only want to say a partner, but in other people that you dislike in yourself, right? And it's just the general atmosphere of close relationships, right? And just looking at that, and that could be very, very healing by, again, first house. Remember I said it's about really looking at the early environment relationships, and you're looking at the relationships that you have as an older individual and making the connection because 100% your early environment impacts your relationships now, from who it is that you choose, how long you stay, how you do relationship, even how you work. It is all there. It's rooted in that, whether you realize it or not. And looking at how you meet society and how you process socialization and like what does that even mean, right? What is society and how do you engage with others in a fair and balanced way? How do you blend and cooperate versus how much do you feel very dug into asserting your own individuality? And just like asking these questions and looking at do you need to do a little bit of work in these areas? Because if you're willing to do the work, man, is it helpful. It's so healing. It just really is. All right, my friend. So I hope this was helpful in some way. You guys take care. Bye-bye. Hey guys, so if you have your Chiron in houses 5 or 11, one of those, this part of the video is for you. So you have to look at, if you have your current in house 5 or 11, you have to look at the second house, eighth house axis. That's going to be the axis of healing for you, okay? Now, the second house is naturally associated with Venus, right? It's Taurus energy, obviously, and Venus rules Taurus. It is a succeeding house. So again, comes after the angular houses. So this is very connected to stability. So what is very healing for that Chiron wound, right, is going to be this idea of stability, right? Protection, rapid changes, you know, and how stable do you feel during times of change, right? But let's get a little more specific about things that you want to be looking at. So you want to be looking at the differentiation of your body out of life, all right? Life in general. Second house is very connected to like this is my hand, these are my toes versus mother, right? It's that second house where we start to differentiate ourselves as separate from mother and what she is. So, on a more in a more palatable way, looking at how do you differentiate yourself from everyone else, right? All of that, right? It's this awareness that we have a body and we have an essence and an energy of our own that's A, not our mothers, but B, also the rest of the world. Really looking at the attachment of your identity to the body and the body ego, right? How do you communicate, excuse me, with your body? Do you treat it kindly? Do you eat healthy food? Second house is very connected to eating healthy food. So what can be very healing for you is second house also rules our weight, keeping a healthy body weight, eating healthy food, respecting your body, not drinking too much, not abusing it in any way. Taking very good care of your internal self, right? Because the second house also rules our internal organs. It's very connected to our sense of self and self-esteem. So forming a more solid sense of I, forming a more solid personal ego, giving yourself more definition, more boundaries, more shape, right? Not allowing it to be sort of, all over the place or rooted in things that are very superficial, because when Chiron's in the fifth house, we can root things in things that are superficial as an attempt to heal ourselves, right? Because fifth house is very connected to joy and ego and falling in love affairs, wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, right? 11th house is friend. But when there's Chiron in there, it's like maybe we don't feel really good about those things. So you have to find your innate wealth, right? Your inherent faculties and capabilities that you can further develop all on your own. This is very connected to the resources or attributes that give you your sense of value, your sense of worth, and really cultivating those things and getting very specific with yourself, right? And figuring out more than anything, like what does security mean for you? Like, what does it mean? Exactly. What is it? I mean, is there a dollar amount? Or is it more about material possessions? Does it have nothing to do with that and more about stable relationships, maybe a little bit of all of those things? You have a fear around these things, and these are things that you want to kind of really lean into because this is going to help you feel very stable and very, very secure. You really have to be careful of what you attach yourself to. Right. So a lot of times, especially when we have Chiron like in the fifth house, it could even speak to the 11th house energy there as well. You don't want to attach yourself to things that are going to be detrimental for you, like alcohol, like, sleeping around, like being, just having any sort of unhealthy habits, right? Is that fifth house is really like how we just and enjoy ourselves, right? Fifth house is also, if you have in the fifth house, Chiron in the fifth house could also, manifest as pain connecting to the idea of children. And so, the solution here of that second house could be really embracing that you are worthy, and that you are loved. Now, at a certain point, if there is, Chiron in the fifth could be problems with fertility. Second house is the body, maybe taking better care of the body in order to help fertility. It's that kind of basic connection there. It's also looking at, what are your hopes to possess, right? What do you hope to possess? What do you possess, first of all? Now, thinking about that, and what do you hope to possess? And really looking at, in very honest way, your connection and your relationship to money in the material world, and your attitude toward those things, toward what it is that you value, and getting very honest about your desire nature. And are the things that are connected to your desire nature, are they good for you? Because if they are, and you're very clear on these things, this could be unbelievably healing. Now, the second house does not work alone. It's working on this axis with the eighth house, which is naturally associated to Pluto and Scorpio. And I can tell you that eighth house is going to be very activated over the next 2 years, with Pluto now moving into Aquarius, Pluto's natural home. Regardless of where your natal Pluto is, everyone's eighth house is going to be popping for the next 1.5 to 2 years, while Pluto settles into that Aquarius energy, wherever it happens to fall in your chart. But since this is an axis of solution, I can tell you that a lot of you are going to be feeling the very move to heal, right? And you're going to have a lot of supportive energy to do it. And you're going to be looking at what is shared between people in your life, right? You and a husband, you and a business partner, right? Eighth house is the stock market, it's investments, it's inheritance, it's insurance payouts, it's people investing in you, it's sex, it's intimacy, it's other people's money, it's absolute commitment. It's also the house of divorce. So, for some of you, it could absolutely be a case where, part of feeling better about yourself is leaving an unhealthy relationship, or it might be to sell a business, or to get into business, or decide to get married. But looking at this, looking at other people's money, all right? Looking at how you fare financially in marriage, in business partnerships, looking at that idea, like I mentioned, of inheritance situations, anything connected to legacy, taxes, taxation, anything like that, investments, debt, also owing money. As well, how well your partner's value system aligns with yours. What happens when you connect, you attempt to merge with other people? Look at that. Do you feel fear? Do you feel a fear, a lack of trust? Do you feel like you are being smothered? Do you feel like you're with somebody who's isolated, or are you feeling like very satisfied, and very like you're in the right space? And understanding relationships as a catalyst for change, very important for your healing, very important for you. More than any other placement, it's really understanding this is like a destiny driven kind of thing, that relationships are meant to be catalysts for change in your life. And part of that is you're going to be experiencing this need to destroy your old ego boundaries and open up some new ones. This is just what you're meant to be doing. There are periods that are necessary for cleansing and renewal in your life that you have to allow to come in. And part of that is allowing anything that's sort of unresolved, right? From the eighth house basement, any sort of issue, especially with early bonding relationships, through the present ones, where are there unresolved issues, right? And it's not about going back and being mad at somebody. It's not about holding grudges. It's absolutely not about that. There's no value add in that. It's about going back and unpacking the emotions that might end up ultimately being sticking points for you when it comes to being able to have healthy relationships, and a healthy relationship to yourself first and foremost, and then of course to other people. This is about raising what's dark inside of you, what's passionate, what's instinctual, and really looking at that raging infant inside of you. And there's no sense to it, right? It doesn't have to be, like, don't try to quell it. Don't try to say, like, oh, I'm being ridiculous. What's the point? That raging infant is part of healing you because it's there. You can act like it's not, but it's there, right? And looking at that, what did you not get? Right, in that space that ultimately ended up manifesting in the realm of those closest relationships, right? And allowing this sort of transformative and raw energy, you know, absolutely allowing that, allowing sex and intimacy to be a place where you transcend yourself, where and you're blending with other in the healthiest way. And more than any other placement, I can tell you that this is the kind of thing that looks at divorce proceedings or ending relationships that are not ultimately fulfilling for you over the long run, and understanding that death, it could be physical death or the death of an ego identity or the death of a status or something like that, is a way of evolving. Right, going back to the idea of relationships being catalysts for change, and looking at how do we allow that death, and then how do we allow the transition, and it's about really looking at that force which is indestructible within you in order to create that change, and understanding your strength, and understanding the idea of self regeneration, because self regeneration is where it's at. This is healing for you, allowing yourself to change, allowing yourself to let go. The worst thing for you to do is to hold on to something that's broken, whether it's an ideology, a sense of self, a relationship, a job, I don't care, whatever it is, right? And really looking at your own sensitivity to the kind of ecosystem, right? Of the world, of other people. And, where are you on the scale of sensitivity and things that we can't see? Because really understanding that there's more beyond here can be unbelievably helpful to you. Astrology, unbelievably healing, eighth house. I'm not saying that because I'm an astrologer. I'm saying that because the eighth house rules the occult, right? But you have to be super careful. Okay, there are a couple of placements, and as I come across them, I say you have to be very careful of dark energy. Yeah, be very careful. So, for example, if you want to study astrology, you study astrology. It's great. It's an amazing science. I'm going to say it. Um, but you got to watch out for people who practice like dark magic or anything like that. That energy will be NG for you guys, not good. Okay. It won't be, you will not feel good. You will have weird crap happening to you. It will not be a good experience. So be very mindful of who you share your energy with. You are an open vessel. You really are. You are a very spongy energy when it comes to energy. So you want to make sure that you're keeping yourself around love and light, love and light. That's all. You know what I mean? And you got to be careful because Satan does disguise himself quite incredibly in many things. So just, use your intuition and be careful of who you share your energy with for sure, right? But don't be afraid to share your energy with the right person and lean into that, okay? That'll be very healing for you. All right, my friend. So I hope this was helpful in some way. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, so this part of the video is for you if you have your Chiron in the sixth house or the 12th house, right? Sixth house or 12th house, where Virgo lives, where Pisces live. You want to look at the axis of house 3 and 9 for healing this Chiron. Third house, ninth house. Let's talk about the third house first. This is naturally associated with Mercury ruled energy. It's where Gemini lives. This is a Caden house. The Caden houses are 3, 6, 9, and 12, and they're seen as preparatory houses, for what comes after the angular houses. They're very associated to this idea of learning, right? And serving as a foundation for activities and that are carried out in the angular houses. So there's a lot of learning here. It's like I have to learn this, right? this idea of Caden energy so that I could do that very angular energy. Okay. So lots of learning is where the path of healing is going to hang out for you guys. Lots of learning. So let's unpack the third house. Third house, again, this is where Gemini lives. This is mental realm, communication, your early education all the way through high school, your siblings, your extended family, your neighbors, your neighborhood. It rules just a lot of conversation, a lot of learning, a lot of um, also an open-minded kind of energy when we're talking about the third house. Third house is very open-minded, right? But in order to even engage in all of that, you have to have a very clear distinction between the mind and body, right? There's got to be this delineating of your physical body and your mind, right? The mental ego. How do you roll, right? Really looking at the development of language and the ability to distinguish things from themselves. Like, how do you think? What is your patterning? What are your prejudices? What are your hangups? What are your blessings in this area, right? And it's really looking at like the concrete mind or that left brain process, really looking at the concrete. This is very, very important, exploring your immediate environment. Now, when we talk about immediate environment, when we talk about concrete, keep in mind, if you have your Chiron in the houses 6 or 12, those are very nebulous energies. Even though sixth house is ruled by air and it's an earth energy, because it opposes that very airy, it's not airy, it's watery Pisces, is the bottomless ocean. There's a lot of very deep emotion there. So we need concrete, right? Concrete is the answer. Left brain. Look at what is your mental style, right? Naming and classifying things. How do you frame the world? I know that sounds very existential, right? It sounds and that actually sounds very ethereal, but it's about getting down to the nuts and bolts of something like, do you view people based solely on how it is that you feel rather than the reality that they're presenting to you? How do you distinguish people from one another? How do you delineate relationships in your life? Where are your boundaries? Where are they? Right? Do you have them? Really looking at this is it's all about discovering relativity, right? Discovering relativity is going to be very helpful for you. How do you compare yourself to what's around you, right? And how do those things compare to each other? You can't help but do it in this space, right? I mean, this is just naturally what happens with the third house, and this is going to be very healing for you, very helpful, right? The general context through which you view your immediate environment needs to be understood. How are you viewing it? Are you viewing it through pain, through fear, through insecurity, through yeah, are you projecting things? Are you feeling um none of those things where you actually don't like dealing with it at all? I mean, whatever it is, there's no right or wrong answer to it. It's just about, thinking about these things. Also, let's see what else. I mentioned siblings already, really looking at understanding what your siblings are like, what do you project onto them, as well as like your aunts and uncles, any sort of extended family member, anyone in your environment too, neighbors, your neighborhood, all of those things, the early school experience, including your old friends, as I mentioned before. Obviously, all forms of communication, writing, speaking, information exchange. These things could be very healing. So it could be very cathartic for you to learn something new. It could be very cathartic for you to lean on a sibling, for you to write a book, write a screenplay, write poetry, write music, be a great communicator to people. Lean on your extended family member, connect with neighbors. These could be very helpful. What's very healing for you as well as going on short journeys, anything like that. And really understanding the years, especially the growing up years, but especially the years between 7 and 14. That 7 year. The 7 year period post the 7 years where your Chiron was being formed, right? Really looking at those, how were you treated with by friends? How were you treated by other people? How were you treated through family? All of those things, looking at all of those things, very, very healing, very, very valuable. Okay. Now let's think about the opposite end of this is that ninth house energy, which is naturally associated with where Sagittarius lives. It's naturally associated with Jupiter as well. Now, this is the manifestation of father energy. So healing father energy, very important to look at that in your life. Otherwise, look, you can't change the past, whatever was. We understand all of that. But understanding father energy really and understanding showing respect for your inner self, your inner child, having respect for yourself well enough to say, I understand that father energy, grandfather, whoever that male dominant energy was, did the best they knew how. I forgive them, all that wonderful stuff. Again, that's great. That does nothing for what's in here, though. This is about admitting father energy made me feel fill in the blank. Because of that, and not only blaming, but it's one of the reasons, right? It's like just trying to put it in context. Because of this situation, in part, this is why I view men, I view belief system, I view faith, right? This way, because I was made to feel like I needed to, right? And it's that kind of thing, right? So you're going to be, the greatest healing here is searching, the search for meaning and purpose and guidelines in life, creating guidelines for yourself, so healing and looking for the truth and looking for the patterns and why we're here in life. I know this is very like airy fairy, but leaning into religion, leaning into faith, getting involved in politics, the law, legalities, local governance. This could make you feel very strong. It could make you feel very like you have agency. It's all about providing agency for yourself, right? So creating your own faith, your own belief system, your own laws, embracing legalities and governance, embracing that higher education could be very healing for you as well. Dealing with foreign land and foreign agencies, importing and exporting kind of things could be very healing. Dealing with foreign cultures could be very healing, very healing. Anything having to do with publishing and marketing, advertising, something that helps build you up. These could be very, very healing things. So as far as like pragmatics, but you really want to look at the higher mind, the intuitive thought process, the working of the right brain, right? You don't want to abandon that. You want to look at how it is that you pursue religion and your belief system. What is God? Who is God to you? Really looking at these things based on where you come from, right? How do you view these things? What pulls you forward and identifying that? And this idea of being able to view life at a distance is very, very important here, right? Your life's journey, having a very definitive life's journey, having purpose, right? And it doesn't have to be you have it all figured out from here to the end of time. It's ridiculous. But it's just about really living in your truth. Ninth house is very connected to your truth and what it is that you believe. So what's going to be healing is living your truth and not living somebody else's truth. That doesn't mean you're going to live in your own little echo chamber, because that's not healthy either. But it's just understanding that there's nothing wrong with you having your own ideas, your own belief system, and other people having theirs as well. So you have to be careful here. I mean, it really is an axis of understanding this idea of being open-minded versus closed-minded, which ninth house could be very closed-minded. It's like, no, 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 this is how it's got to be. And just opening up your mind and understanding that you're allowed to have your own ideas and your own ideologies and beliefs. It doesn't mean that you have to isolate yourself from other people or X people out of your life, right? If there's a situation that doesn't align with you. So this idea of sitting back though, and being able to view life at a distance and really looking at where it is that you're going, it's very important. And this idea of being able to codify systems of collective thought, like what does society think? Ninth house is very connected to society and societal norms and belief systems. And and just kind of being able to put it all together, understanding that there's an organization to all of it, if that makes sense. Very, very important because you don't really understand that when that Chiron energy in the 12th house, 6th house, and or Pisces Virgo energy could be very tricky. Certainly be pretty tricky there. Also, the idea of higher courts can be very healing for those of you who are very involved in like law, anything like that. There could even be, I mean, look, there could even be a situation where you break the law and you end up going to prison, hence your Chiron on the sixth house, 12th house axis, and that ultimately ends up being very healing for you. It ends up being a very good thing in your life. You end up growing from that situation. Yeah, the ability to see where something is heading should certainly be exercised here. Where the reason I'm saying that is especially with Chiron, in that 12th house, Chiron in the sixth house, there could be a debilitation when it comes to your ability to problem solve, your ability to actually like see through the fog. So it could be very, very helpful for you to be able to, say, okay, this is what I'm doing, and then sort of say, let me sit down and think about what's on the other side of this. How is this probably going to roll out? That'll be very, very healthy for you. What will also be very healthy for you is to embrace any sort of in-law relationships, anything like that. A brother-in-law, sister-in-law, mother-in-law, father-in-law, a very ninth house energy as well. Not daughter-in-law and son-in-law. Those are 11th house, right? But brother-in-law, sister-in-law, mother-in-law, father-in-law can actually be very healing in your life. Those could actually be healing. I could hear a lot of you from here saying, no way, um, those aren't healing, but they can be healing. So hopefully this was helpful, my friends. Thank you so much for hanging with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.